Welcome back to the channel Rare Coins All World, coin collectors and enthusiasts. If you're new to the world of rare and valuable coins, then you're in for a treat today. We're about to dive into one of the most fascinating coins from the mid-20th century, the 1965 Washington quarter dollar. Now, when you hear quarter, you might think it's just another coin in your pocket change, but trust me, there's a lot more to this coin than meets the eye. So, grab your magnifying glass, because we're about to uncover some hidden treasures and reveal why this particular quarter is worth so much more than its face value. Let's start by setting the stage with a little history. The Washington quarter was first minted in 1932 to honor the first president of the United States, George Washington. For decades, this coin has been a symbol of American pride, with its iconic image of Washington on the obverse and the bald eagle on the reverse. However, 1965 marked a pivotal year in U.S. coinage. It was a year of great change, and the Washington quarter was no exception. In 1965, the United States faced a major silver shortage due to rising demand and the volatility of the precious metal market. This led the U.S. Mint to make a dramatic shift. While earlier quarters had been struck with 90% silver, the quarters minted in 1965 and onward were made of a copper-nickel clad composition, meaning that silver was no longer a part of the equation for regular circulating quarters. This shift makes the 1965 Washington quarter one of the first coins in the U.S. to feature this new composition. However, there's more to this coin than just the change in metal content. This particular year, 1965, is significant for another reason: the existence of several rare minting errors that make certain quarters from this year incredibly valuable. These errors didn't happen by accident, they were a product of the very transitional period the mint was going through. A small mistake during the minting process could lead to the creation of a coin that's highly sought after by collectors today. One of the most famous and valuable errors for this year is the dropped letter error. This happens when a letter or design element isn't fully struck onto the coin, resulting in a missing or incomplete detail. While this might sound like a minor flaw, it's a detail that collectors love because it's proof of the coin's rarity and uniqueness. A 1965 Washington quarter with such an error could fetch much more than you would expect, as it's a rare anomaly in the world of U.S. coins. Another type of error to keep an eye out for is the off-center strike. This occurs when the coin is not aligned properly during the minting process, causing part of the design to be off-center or even completely missing from one side. These errors are incredibly rare and unique, and coins that have them are highly prized by collectors. An off-center 1965 Washington quarter is not something you come across every day, and it could be worth a lot more than its face value. Now, let's talk about the condition of the coin. As with all collectibles, the condition of the coin plays a major role in determining its value. Most quarters from 1965 have been heavily circulated, which means they often show significant wear and tear. However, if you happen to find one in uncirculated or mint condition, this coin becomes a hidden gem. Uncirculated 1965 Washington quarters, especially those with minting errors, can command prices far beyond the average quarter. So, what's the real value of this coin? Well, the price of a 1965 Washington quarter can vary widely depending on its condition, rarity, and any errors it might have. But if you're lucky enough to come across one in exceptional condition, or one with a minting error, you could be looking at a coin worth $100,000, yes, that's right, $100,000 for a single 1965 Washington quarter. Imagine finding one of these coins in your pocket change or in an old collection you've had for years. This is exactly why coin collectors scour the markets and check every coin they come across with a magnifying glass. You never know when you might stumble upon a small fortune. So, what should you do if you think you have a valuable 1965 Washington quarter? The first thing is to examine the coin closely. Look for any unusual characteristics, such as off-center strikes, missing letters, or other minting errors. Check the condition. If it's uncirculated or close to mint, that's a good sign. And, of course, don't hesitate to get it appraised by a professional coin dealer. An expert can help you determine whether your coin is worth its weight in gold, or, in this case, silver. Today, We're about to dive into a coin that might not look like much at first glance, but could hold a serious surprise for you. That's right, we're talking about the 1983 Washington quarter dollar. At first glance, this coin might seem like just another piece of US currency from the 80s, but let me tell you, there's far more to it than meets the eye. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see why the 1983 Washington quarter is one of the most intriguing coins in the world of numismatics. Now, let's take a step back and look at the context behind this coin. The Washington quarter, of course, has been a staple of American coinage for decades. First minted in 1932 to honor President George Washington, the design has remained largely unchanged. However, by 1983, this coin was starting to show its age in a new way, not in design, but in its composition. In the early 1980s, the U.S. Mint was still using a copper-nickel-clad composition for quarters, replacing the silver that had been in coins like the quarter before 1965. This composition change was a result of the economic challenges the country faced during the 1960s and early 70s. Silver was becoming too expensive, so the Mint switched to a more affordable mixture of copper and nickel. But while the change in metal content was significant, it's the year 1983 that stands out because of a series of unexpected quirks, some of which have turned this coin into a coveted collector's item. And here's where things get exciting: some of the 1983 quarters are not like the rest. The key factor that makes these quarters rare and valuable lies in the errors and misprints that happen during the minting process. One of the most sought-after versions of the 1983 Washington quarter is one that has a double die error. Double die errors happen when a coin is struck twice, and during the second strike, the die shifts slightly. This results in a coin with a blurry or doubled design, especially on the lettering. If you find a 1983 Washington quarter with this error, you're looking at something very special indeed. These coins are incredibly rare, and numismatists will tell you, double die errors are some of the most highly sought-after mistakes in coin collecting. Another error you should be aware of is the off-center strike. While off-center strikes can happen with any coin, they are especially valuable in coins that were minted with the perfect amount of detail in the first place. The 1983 Washington quarter, due to its specific design and the way it was struck, has produced some off-center strikes that can fetch a premium. If you happen to find a 1983 quarter that's misaligned, don't just toss it aside thinking it's a regular mistake. It could actually be a jackpot in disguise. But let's not forget the other critical aspect of coin value: condition. Just like any collectible, the condition of the coin plays a major role in its worth. The 1983 Washington quarter was widely circulated, and so most of them you'll find today show significant wear. However, coins in uncirculated or mint condition are the true treasures. Finding a pristine 1983 Washington quarter that hasn't been worn down or damaged by years of circulation is rare, and if it has one of those minting errors we talked about earlier, you could be looking at a real goldmine. And of course, we can't forget about the fact that collectors are always hunting for coins from specific years, especially those that stand out as being rare or unique. If you've got a 1983 Washington quarter that's well preserved and has one of those errors or unusual features, it's likely to fetch a much higher price at auction or from interested collectors. So, how much can a 1983 Washington quarter be worth? Well, if you've got a well-preserved, error-free 1983 quarter, it's probably worth a few bucks more than face value. But if you've got one with a double die error or off-center strike, you might be looking at a much higher price tag. For those of you who are lucky enough to find a 1983 Washington quarter in top-tier condition, or with one of these errors, the value could reach as much as $76,000. Yes, that's right, $76,000. Now, this might sound incredible, but it's absolutely true. A single coin, worth just a quarter back in 1983, could now be worth a staggering amount because of the errors and rarity associated with it. It's this very unpredictability that makes coin collecting so exciting. You never know what hidden treasures you might find just lying around in your spare change or in a collection passed down through the generations. So, if you're out there hunting for rare coins, keep an eye out for that 1983 Washington quarter. It might just be sitting in your collection, or perhaps you'll come across one in the future that could turn into a major find. Today, we're going to dive deep into a coin that holds a special place in U.S. numismatics and could be hiding a fortune in your collection, the 1967 Washington Quarter Dollar. You may have come across this coin in your spare change or even have one tucked away in your drawer, but what you might not know is that this little quarter could be worth a whole lot more than you think. So, grab your magnifying glass and get ready to discover why this coin is a favorite among collectors and why its value is on the rise. Let's start with a bit of history. The Washington Quarter Dollar, first minted in 1932 to honor the first President of the United States, George Washington, has been a staple in American coinage ever since. The design on the obverse features a profile of Washington, with the familiar inscription, Liberty, and the year of minting. On the reverse, we have the famous eagle holding arrows and an olive branch, symbolizing strength and peace. It's a classic design, one that's remained iconic in American currency for decades, but by the time the 1967 Washington Quarter was struck, there were significant changes taking place in the minting process. Since 1965, quarters were no longer composed of silver, and instead, they were made of a copper-nickel-clad composition. This change was necessary due to the rising cost of silver and the economic challenges facing the country. While the change in metal content might seem minor, it actually had a profound effect on the production and quality of the coins that were minted during this period. So, you might be wondering, what makes the 1967 Washington Quarter stand out in the world of coin collecting? Well, it's all about rarity and condition. In general, the 1967 Washington Quarter was minted in large numbers. It was a year where the U.S. Mint produced millions of these coins, and most of them were released into circulation. However, the key to finding a valuable 1967 quarter lies in the details. First off, let's talk about coin errors. Every coin is struck with a die, and sometimes during the minting process, errors occur. These errors are exactly what makes certain coins valuable in the world of numismatics. The 1967 Washington Quarter is no exception, and there are a few notable errors to look out for that can dramatically increase the value of this coin. One of the most sought-after errors in the 1967 Washington Quarter is the double die error. This occurs when the die used to strike the coin is misaligned during the minting process, resulting in a doubled image on the coin. If you find a 1967 quarter with a noticeable double die, especially around the date or on the lettering, then you've found yourself a rare and valuable treasure. Double die errors are extremely desirable to collectors because they are unique, and only a small number of them were ever produced. Another error to keep an eye out for is the off-center strike. While these types of errors are not as common, they can add significant value to a coin, especially if the misalignment is dramatic. An off-center 1967 Washington Quarter, where the design appears to be shifted or incomplete due to improper alignment during the minting process, is definitely worth checking closely. The more pronounced the error, the higher the value of the coin. Besides the errors, the condition of the coin plays a crucial role in determining its value. While most 1967 quarters were heavily circulated, a coin that's been kept in excellent condition, with minimal wear and no scratches, could be worth much more than a coin that's seen years of use. Collectors are particularly interested in finding coins in uncirculated condition, which means the coin has never been in circulation and still has its original shine and crisp details. But here's where it gets even more interesting. There's also something called the proof version of the 1967 Washington Quarter. Proof coins are special editions that are struck with more care, often using a higher quality die and polished blanks. These coins are made for collectors and are usually produced in much smaller quantities than regular circulation coins. A proof 1967 Washington Quarter is a highly coveted item among numismatists and can fetch a much higher price than regular circulation coins. So, if you happen to come across a proof 1967 quarter in pristine condition, you could be holding a gem. Now, you're probably wondering just how much these coins can be worth. The value of a 1967 Washington Quarter can vary widely depending on its condition and whether it has any minting errors. Most standard 1967 quarters are only worth a few dollars above face value. However, if you have a well-preserved example, especially one with a double die error or off-center strike, you could be looking at a much higher price. Are you ready for the big reveal? If you find yourself with a 1967 Washington quarter in excellent condition, especially with a rare error or in proof form, then you might be sitting on a coin worth a jaw-dropping $88,000. Yes, you heard that right. $88,000 for a single 1967 Washington quarter. It's incredible to think that a coin that was minted almost 60 years ago could now be worth so much. This is why coin collecting can be such a rewarding hobby. There's always the possibility of finding something extraordinary, hidden in plain sight. So, if you have a 1967 Washington quarter in your collection, don't just toss it aside. Take a closer look at its condition and check for any errors. If you have a coin with a double die, off-center strike, or if it's in pristine uncirculated or proof condition, you could be looking at a serious windfall. Today, because we're about to uncover something that could make you a lot of money, or at least give you something interesting to look for when you're going through your spare change. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of the 1986 Washington quarter dollar, a coin that's not just a piece of currency, but a hidden gem that could be worth far more than its face value. So, whether you're just starting your collection or you're a seasoned numismatist, this video is packed with important details that will make you see this quarter in a whole new light. Let's kick things off with a little background. The Washington quarter dollar, first introduced in 1932, has become one of the most iconic coins in U.S. history. It features a striking portrait of George Washington on the obverse, and on the reverse, you've got the majestic bald eagle clutching an olive branch and arrows, symbolizing peace and strength. This design has remained mostly unchanged over the years, making it easily recognizable to collectors and non-collectors alike. By the time we reach 1986, this coin had been in circulation for over 50 years, and by then, the U.S. Mint had already transitioned the Washington quarter to a copper-nickel-clad composition back in 1965. That meant no more silver, but still, the Washington quarter remained a solid and reliable currency. But here's where things get interesting. The 1986 Washington quarter, while still a relatively modern coin, has qualities that can make it a truly valuable piece for collectors. Now, before we go into its value, let's talk about what makes this coin so special. At first glance, a 1986 quarter might seem like just another standard piece of change that's been circulating for decades. However, as with many coins, it's not just about what you see at first. The true worth of a coin is often hidden in the details, things like minting errors, low production, and the overall condition of the coin. These factors can dramatically increase a coin's value, and the 1986 Washington quarter is no exception. First, let's talk about minting errors. As with many coins, errors during the minting process can turn an otherwise common coin into a rare find. For the 1986 Washington quarter, there are a few key errors you should look for. One of the most prized errors for this coin is a double die. This happens when the die used to strike the coin is misaligned during production, causing the design to appear doubled in certain areas. The most common place to find this error on a 1986 quarter is around the lettering or the date itself. A noticeable double die can make a huge difference in the value of the coin, especially for collectors who are after that rare and unique piece for their collection. Another error that makes the 1986 Washington quarter stand out is the off-center strike. If the coin wasn't properly aligned during the minting process, you could end up with a quarter that has a distorted design, with some parts of the coin missing or the design appearing shifted. These off-center strikes are highly collectible because they're not only rare, but they also show that the coin has a unique, one-of-a-kind flaw. And as you can imagine, in the world of coin collecting, that makes it incredibly valuable. Now, let's talk about the condition of the coin. Most 1986 quarters were circulated for years, and many of them have been worn down by the daily grind of transactions. However, if you come across a 1986 Washington quarter in near-perfect or uncirculated condition, you're holding onto something special. A coin that has been preserved with minimal wear and tear can see its value shoot up, especially if it's still shiny and has crisp, clear details that make it stand out. Coins that have been kept in pristine condition are incredibly attractive to collectors because they represent a piece of history that has been preserved almost exactly as it was when it was minted. You might also find that some of these 1986 quarters were struck with unique characteristics that are slightly different from regular circulation coins. This could include proof coins, which were made specifically for collectors. Proof coins are struck with higher quality dies and often feature more intricate details and a mirror-like finish. Proof 1986 Washington quarters can be extremely valuable, especially when they're part of a limited mintage. Now, we know all this talk about minting errors and conditions is interesting, but you're probably wondering just how much these factors can affect the value of a 1986 Washington quarter. Well, hold on to your seat because this is where it gets exciting. If you find a 1986 Washington quarter with a double die error or an off-center strike, or if you're lucky enough to have one in perfect, uncirculated condition, it could be worth a small fortune. The value of a 1986 Washington quarter typically ranges from its face value of 25 cents for standard coins to a few dollars for those in excellent condition. However, when you factor in rare errors, such as the double die or off-center strike, the price can skyrocket. And here's the big revelation: if you happen to have one of these rare coins with the right conditions or errors, your 1986 Washington quarter could be worth a mind-blowing $80,000, that's right, $80,000 for a single coin. Imagine stumbling upon this little gem in your pocket change or your coin jar. This is exactly why coin collecting is so exciting, because the potential to find something valuable is always there, hiding just under the surface. So, if you have a 1986 Washington quarter tucked away in your collection or buried deep in your spare change, it's definitely worth taking a closer look. Check for any minting errors, like double die strikes or off-center strikes, and make sure to examine its condition. If it's in great shape, or better yet, has a rare error, you might just have a $80,000 coin in your hands. Today, we've got something truly exciting for you, a coin that may be hiding in your collection or possibly even in your pocket change right now. It's the 1971 Washington quarter dollar, and if you thought this was just another common coin, you might want to think again. This particular quarter holds a hidden value that might just surprise you. So, if you're a serious collector or even just a casual enthusiast, stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll want to take a second look at any 1,971 quarters you come across. Now, the Washington quarter dollar has been a staple of American currency for decades, and it's no surprise that collectors are always on the lookout for certain years or unique characteristics that set some of these coins apart from the rest. The 1971 Washington quarter dollar is a perfect example of this. While this coin may seem like a run-of-the-mill piece of currency, it has some very rare qualities that make it incredibly valuable to the right collector. To understand why the 1971 Washington quarter dollar is so sought after, we need to dive a bit into the history and context of the coin. In 1971, the United States Mint was still producing quarters in the traditional copper-nickel clad composition, which had been the norm since 1965. The design, featuring George Washington on the obverse and an eagle on the reverse, was already familiar, having been in circulation for decades. However, despite its familiar look, the 1971 quarter was produced in high numbers and was widely circulated, meaning that most of these coins saw significant wear and tear over time. But here's where things start to get interesting. While the 1971 Washington quarter was struck in large quantities, only a small number of them were minted with unique errors or irregularities that make them highly valuable today. And for any serious coin collector, these rare varieties can make a world of difference. One of the most sought-after features of the 1971 Washington quarter is the presence of minting errors. You see, coin minting is a delicate process, and sometimes, things don't go quite as planned. For the 1971 quarters, one of the most desirable errors is the double die strike. This happens when the die used to imprint the design on the coin strikes the metal planchet more than once, causing the image to appear doubled. This error is especially prominent on the date and the lettering around the coin, which is often where collectors see the most noticeable difference. A double die error in good condition can make a 1971 quarter worth exponentially more than the standard quarter you might find in circulation. Another minting error that makes the 1971 Washington quarter particularly interesting is the off-center strike. If the coin was misaligned during the minting process, parts of the design could appear shifted or even cut off entirely. This irregularity gives the coin a unique and one-of-a-kind look that can really grab the attention of collectors. Imagine holding a 1971 Washington quarter where the eagle's wings are only half visible or where the edge of the coin itself has been cropped due to this error. It's a truly rare and special find, but it's not just errors that give the 1971 Washington quarter its value. The condition of the coin is incredibly important, too. Like many other coins, the state of preservation can make a huge difference in how much it's worth. Most of the 1971 quarters were used in circulation, and as a result, they have significant wear and scratches. However, a quarter that has been well preserved or remains in uncirculated condition can be quite rare. If you happen to find a 1971 Washington quarter that looks nearly new, without much wear or damage, it could be worth much more than its face value. Now, you might be wondering, how much could a 1971 Washington quarter be worth if it has one of these rare errors or is in exceptional condition? Well, let me tell you, it could be worth a lot more than you think. While most 1971 quarters will only fetch a few dollars, those with significant errors or in pristine, uncirculated condition can reach impressive prices. If you're lucky enough to own a 1971 Washington quarter with a double die error, an off-center strike, or just in mint condition, it could be worth a shocking $83,000, that's right, $83,000 for just one coin. The rarity of these coins, combined with their minting errors and great condition, makes them a collector's dream. So, if you've got any 1971 Washington quarters in your collection, it's worth taking a closer look. You might just have a small treasure on your hands. To wrap things up, let me remind you that the world of coin collecting is full of surprises. What might seem like just another coin can turn out to be worth an astonishing amount of money. So, always be on the lookout for those rare minting errors, unusual strikes, and coins in top condition, because you never know when you'll stumble upon a $83,000 gem hidden in plain sight. Thanks for watching today's video. If you found this information helpful and exciting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing coin discoveries. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss out on another hidden treasure. Keep searching, keep collecting, and remember, the value of a coin is often hidden just beneath the surface, so always stay curious, and happy hunting.